So the dramatic suspension of Comair flights this week has left many frustrated consumers fighting what appears to be an uphill battle. That's as they try to get a refund or some kind of compensation for both the money and time that they've lost. The South African Civil Aviation Authority, you might remember, grounding British Airways and Gulula flights over safety concerns for 5 days. That suspension has since been lifted. Now, Newzroom Afrika took some time to speak to one of these frustrated passengers. Take a listen.
Travel today at 7:10 in the morning. That's where our flight was supposed to go. So we just found on the news E24 that our flight, the Gulula flight, is still operating since from today on the 17th. And we're around Benoni. So we're supposed to run from Benoni to OR Tambo. When we reached at OR Tambo, they told us that the flight is already left. They can offer us another flight at 12:20. We didn't get emails, we didn't get calls, we didn't even get the messages. We just saw on the news 24. So they didn't inform us, it's nothing. I don't even know what should I say, because they even said you're supposed to pay for the package. So here, now we're supposed to wait for more than 4 to 5 hours waiting here for 20 past flight. We're supposed to take our car back to Benoni. We don't have a driver, so I don't know what we're going to do. We just want to tell the Gulula just to inform people in time with everything, even if it can be via SMS, email, or just call their customer that at this time, so since we are no longer working, we ask that from tomorrow or from today at this time, we're still going to operate. That's all.
All right, let's find out what customers' rights are in this instance. And in fact, this is as, local airfares or flight prices continue to rise here at home. We'll bring in the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman, that's Magauta Mphahlele, who's with us via our video link this morning. Magauta, it's lovely to have you on the program. Thanks so much indeed for making time. I'm sure as an ombuds, you're watching quite closely as this particular story continues to unfold, especially because so many people have come forward asking for refunds that Comair simply can't provide in this instance. The Consumer Protection Act, what does it say about what's due to these consumers, given the very unique circumstances under which they may have lost their money?
Okay, it does definitely deal with the issue. Here we would be looking at Section 47 of the Consumer Protection Act, which provides that a supplier is not supposed to take money from the consumer if they don't have a reasonable basis on which they will be able to provide the goods or the services. Now, there are two scenarios here. The CPA says that if the supplier is not able to provide the service due to its own fault, the consumer would be entitled to be refunded the amount that they paid, interest as prescribed, and incidental costs. So the consumer who was on the line said that they had to spend money on a car, they spent time at some people had to maybe book a hotel because they could not travel anymore. So there are many things. So those would be incidental costs that are related to the breach of the contract. So because not being able to supply the service or the goods at the time and the date as agreed is a breach of contract. But then the Act continues to say where the inability to supply is because of circumstances beyond the supplier's control, then the consumer would still be entitled to a refund, but there the supplier would not be obligated to provide a refund if they informed consumers on time of the inability to supply, and they offered alternatives that the consumer accepted. So the consumer here is expected to be reasonable. So you will see that what happened here, from what the consumer said, is that they were not informed at all. So they did not meet that requirement in the Act that they should inform consumers as reasonably, quickly as possible as they could. And the Act further says that for circumstances beyond your control does not include your inability as a supplier to implement any reasonable business requirement relating to your business. So here we don't know what really happened in the process of the investigation by the Civil Aviation Authority and how Comair responded to that investigation. So for us to be able to make that call, we would have to have sight of the events that led to that suspension.
And that's really where the rubber hits the tarmac, isn't it? We actually are not sure what and what isn't reasonable, and what can actually be put on the foot of Comair insofar as blame is concerned, because we don't have the details from the CAA about why exactly Comair was grounded. All we were told loosely is that they violated certain provisions and it's due to safety concerns after a spate of incidents that took place. And so in the midst of that uncertainty, what becomes the advice, the guidance to consumers who understandably are pressed to get this money back?
Remember, the Act says that if the cancellation was because of circumstances beyond the control of the supplier, so here we don't really know, the consumer is still entitled to a refund, okay, but not with interest and incidental costs.
Right. Okay.
So that's the difference.
But
if it was their fault, then the consumer would be entitled to a refund with interest and incidental costs. So if you had to return a hired car and you couldn't, and there are penalties, that would be cost incidental to the event that the service was not provided.
Yeah, I appreciate both scenarios. It seems to me that the CPA is still silent, though, on how long the supplier can take in actually giving out that refund, because I'm sure you'll appreciate that part of what is actually at the heart of the frustration is, for instance, Comair saying, okay, we could talk about some kind of refund, but you may have to wait for as long as 8 weeks before that happens.
Yeah, well, the CPA was dropped because, remember, the CPA applies to so many sectors.
Yes.
You know, actually it regulates the whole economy. I was part of drafting it, so I'm guilty. But the thinking was that you don't want to be too prescriptive, because a hotel cancelling an event and a restaurant cancelling a booking is different from an airline. So imagine if you prescribed time frames and said within 5 days, because remember that we are also trying to balance the interests of business. Businesses should run. But there is always the requirement that it must be reasonable. So, and that gives leeway to us or the National Consumer Tribunal, if the matter does reach the tribunal, to determine what is reasonable in that sector, because there are so many sectors that are regulated by the CPA, and it would be difficult to prescribe, because you can't have a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, and we're back to that ancient question, what maketh a reasonable man? But perhaps that's a different discussion.
Yeah, but definitely consumers should be, look, they should negotiate. The Act says that they can offer alternatives.
Yeah, yeah.
Here the alternative is a different flight or a voucher, but the Act says that the consumer must accept that. So it means that they must look, and also the consumer must not be unreasonable. But so, which means that they must deal with each case by case. So if it was just me, Magauta, going off once off on a holiday and I don't want to go anymore, then they need to listen to me, and I must and say, okay, we can't give you a voucher, we have to refund you. If I do intend to travel in the future, a voucher could be a good alternative to be given. So it's an engagement with, so you can't have a blanket response, because the Act says the consumer must accept the alternative offer. So it's a negotiation with each and every consumer. They would have to have capacity in their call center to deal with the consumer's request.
It's so interesting what you've just mentioned. Very quickly, I want to just read out just one of the posts we came across on social media from a frustrated passenger since you raised this issue around vouchers. This person says, you can't be serious. People need that money now in order to book alternative airlines, but you're holding their money hostage. Who says we want to fly Kulula again? Why are you forcing people? Why is it so difficult to give us a refund? This person raises valid points. The question becomes, is this person being reasonable?
Well, we would have to look at their circumstances. I mean, if they really are not able to travel in the future, and of course, it's understandable that consumers would be angry and not want to use that airline. I mean, it's their choice. So, yeah, I would not say that they are unreasonable. If they remember that the Act says that the consumer has to accept.
Sure. No matter how you see it.
Yeah.
No matter how you actually read into this, there is one thing that's indisputable. Both sides are in a very, very precarious situation. Thanks for helping us break it down on this Friday morning. Really do appreciate your time. Magauta Mphahlele is the Goods and Services Ombudsman. Appreciate your time once again.